My name's Andrew, and in this video I'm going to show you how I installed luxury vinyl plank flooring in my basement bathroom, taking it from this sad original slab, sad situation I know, and turning it into this. So if you're looking to install LVP in your basement or basement bathroom, I recommend you watch this whole video. So before I installed LVP in my basement bathroom, I installed LVP throughout my entire basement, and I have a detailed video that goes through that process that I'll link below. I think you'll find it helpful, and it's probably a good video to watch to kind of supplement this one. Additionally, I have a blog that you can check out that goes through even more information on installing LVP. Before you can install LVP, you need to make sure that your concrete slab is perfectly flat, and although this area of my basement was initially pretty flat, after the plumbers went in and put in the under slab plumbing, it was very far from flat. So I had to apply something called a self-leveling underlayment, which is basically this thin topping of concrete, which is going to help to level out your floor. For Metro Floors LVP, which is what I'm installing, I need to make sure that the floor is flat within 3/16 of an inch over a 10-foot radius. So I'll link a video down below showing how I installed this self-leveling concrete underlayment in case you need to level your basement floor. And the last thing we need to talk about before installing LVP is basement waterproofing. You need to make sure there's no moisture in your basement before you install LVP. In my basement, I had to install a system called interior drain tiles, which collects water at the base of the foundation, routes it over to a sump pump, and then pumps it out of the house. Another common waterproofing method is something called an exterior French drain, but these are two of the most common methods for waterproofing a basement. Make sure that you handle any water issues before you install something like LVP. Now, before we lay the LVP, you want to sweep up any dirt or debris. Vacuuming is also a good idea. And then I collected any dust with a mop. And because LVP is a floating floor, you want to allow for a little bit of space for the floor to expand and contract with changing temperatures. So put some spacers around the room. 1/4 of an inch is fine. So typically you're going to start your LVP installation in the back left corner of the room, which is what I did for my basement. But because this is a continuation in my bathroom, I'm actually going to connect from one room to another. And I'm going to start my LVP installation in the bathroom with a molding. Because these floors are the same on both sides, a T-molding is what we're going to install here. So as you can see here, I completed the LVP installation in the adjacent room, and then I ripped some of the width of this first piece out so that I could put the next piece in place and have it interlock properly. And then we have the track positioned between the two rooms, and we're going to install that T-molding over top. So these moldings are typically going to come with a track that's made of metal that I'm cutting here with my miter saw. And then here's the actual T-molding, which I'm going to measure and then cut to size. To anchor the transition molding track, you're going to mark the screw penetrations and you're going to drill down using a carbide tip masonry bit into the concrete floor, vacuum out any dirt or debris, then put the inserts in place, position the track over top, and then you're going to screw the track to the floor below. You can also add some construction adhesive for additional hold. Then take the T-molding, snap it into place, and use a hammer to tap it in so it interlocks properly. So with the T-molding transitioning between the two rooms, you can see on the right-hand side, I had to use a jigsaw to cut out that notch around the wall, and I ripped down that first board so that it would be a perfect width so that I wouldn't need to notch out the other side. So instead of trying to show you how to install LVP in this narrow, dark bathroom, let's go back out to the other room and I'll show you actually how to install LVP. As mentioned, you want to start in the back left corner of the room as indicated by the number 1 tile there, and you want to have a 6-inch minimum stagger between tiles and also on the end of the room. Also, you want to avoid having a small sliver at the end, so if you measure and there's going to be a small sliver, you're going to want to cut a little bit off both sides so that it's kind of split between the front and back of the room. For my basement bathroom, I'm using Metro Floors Engage Inception LVP, which is waterproof and has an underlayment attached to the backside, which I think is well worth the money. I had to install underlayment separately for another project, and it was not fun. LVP is manufactured with a groove edge and a tongue edge. The tongue edge is going to be positioned towards the starting wall, and the groove edge is going to be towards the middle of the room. To interlock two tiles, insert the tongue into the groove, and it forms a nice watertight seal. When installing the adjacent tile, insert the tongue into the groove and then slide it over so that the short edge of the tongue rests inside the groove of the board installed previously, and use a mallet to secure the boards together. And for every single LVP installation, you're going to need to learn how to cut the boards. To cut LVP, I recommend that you transpose the measurement onto the face of the LVP and then use a carpenter square and a utility knife to score the face of the LVP. Then flip the board over, snap it along the scored lines, and use a utility knife to cut through the underlayment on the bottom. This is the best way to cut LVP, at least according to me. Now that we know how to actually install LVP, let's move back into the bathroom. And as you can see here, I'm inserting the tongue edge into the groove edge of the row that was installed previously. And I had to notch around that wall using a jigsaw. I recommend that you mark cuts like that using a carpenter square and a Sharpie, and then a jigsaw is the best way I found to cut those boards out. Over on the left-hand side, I want to make sure that it's a clean, even line between the boards because I'm going to install a piece of molding there in a minute, and once everything looked even, I used the mallet to secure the short edges together. Additionally, as part of the LVP installation kit I got on Amazon, there's a tapping block that you can use to make sure the boards are interlocked perfectly. Now at this location, I'm going to be installing an accordion door to separate the furnace from the rest of the bathroom. So I'm measuring the threshold length here for the reducer molding that we're going to install to transition from the LVP to the concrete slab on the other side. Now that we have the length, we're going to cut the molding track just like we cut the molding track for the team molding that got this project started. Then you're simply going to measure and cut your reducer molding to the correct length. Position the track in place and secure it to the slab just like we did for the team molding. Then snap the reducer molding in place, which gives us a nice clean transition between the slab and the LVP flooring on the edge. Here's a look at the accordion door I installed in between the bathroom and the furnace, and I have a dedicated video on the installation of this accordion door. I'll link it down below. At this point, we're in the narrow quarter of the bathroom between the wall and the tub, and I could have staggered the joints here, but I got a little bit lazy and just did straight full boards. Here's a look from the other angle showing how I'm taking the tongue edge of this next board, inserting it into the groove edge of the board previously installed, and then snapping it in place. Now, the next LVP board we install is going to go over top of this toilet pipe here, which is eventually going to be our toilet flange. So I made a few measurements to determine where that pipe was going to actually intersect with the board. And then I found this roll of mesh tape to be a pretty similar circumference to the actual pipe. So I used it as a template to mark the cutout penetration. A Sharpie was better for this since you can see it better when you make the cut. To cut out this circular penetration, I first drilled a hole through the center, then I used a jigsaw to go through that center hole, and then I cut around the circumference of the penetration. This wasn't a perfect cut, but the toilet's gonna cover it up anyways. After making the cut, I positioned it in place. It turned out to fit pretty nicely, and then I inserted the tongue edge into the groove and locked it in place. Because the last piece of LVP was a bit narrower than a full width board, I was gonna have to rip it down. And to do that, I measured the distance between the last piece installed and the wall, then I transposed that width onto a new piece of LVP that I then ripped down to size using a circular saw. After ripping the board to length, I went back and vacuumed up any dirt or debris that might have accumulated in that last spot, and then I positioned the final board in place, interlocked the tongue with the groove, and then I used a pull bar, which came with my Amazon LVP installation kit, to pull it in place, making sure that it was interlocked properly. Then to close out this LVP installation, I found the studs using a stud finder, attached the baseboards to the studs, and then I caulked the seam between the LVP and the tub. At this point, the LVP installation in my basement bathroom is done. Let's take a quick reminder look at where we started, and here's a look at the final result. In the next couple of videos, we're going to be installing the drop ceiling and installing the toilet, so if you want to see the rest of those videos, subscribe, drop a like down below to help me out with the algorithm, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.